Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. So when you're awake at 2 a.m., restless and not able to sleep, is that your first impulse? To say, God, you must be saying something to me. I'm all ears. Let me know what it is. Psalm 39, which we read together today, it's my favorite psalm. It talks about God creating us, forming our inward parts. We are made to hear God, to know God, and to make God known. That's how God made us. And it's quite hard to trust that. On Friday, I spent a day with the young adult program in the Diocese of Massachusetts. There were 23 young adults in their 20s who are spending a year of service in a congregation or a non-profit, living in community. They get $400 a month to feed and clothe themselves. Housing and healthcare is provided. And they're amazing young people. And we were working with, so what's your vocation? What are you going to do when you finish here? Where are you being called in life? And the way I believe in which we hear God's call, we hear, is to listen to what's on our hearts. What is it that we really care about in the world? What breaks our hearts? What do we long for? What upsets us? What's on our hearts? God made the heart. When we're troubled, that's God's Spirit talking to us. And what are we going to do about it? Well, what are you good at? What do you love doing? You think God gave you those gifts just for your own use? No. They're there to be placed in the service of what God wants you to do in the world, and you know the direction of that by what you care about. It's our inward parts that God has made that will lead us to listen. And it's interesting to look at, so what are the objections that we have to that the young people have? What gets in the way of us hearing and responding? Well, I'm not worthy is one. Who am I? And, well, my friends and family wouldn't like it. My parents helped finance this college education that I have big loans for, and now you want me to work in the social sector and the non-profit instead of earning lots of money. I wouldn't like that. So there's resistance internally and externally, and society doesn't always support the direction that God calls us. In fact, one of the tests of is this God really calling is that the call will turn things upside down a bit for the society in which we live. That was true for Samuel. As he listened to the voice of God, Eli, who had taught him to listen, heard that, Eli, you haven't been doing your job. Your sons are out there corrupt and doing harm to the people, and you're not doing anything about it. And it was Samuel, Eli's protege, who gave him that word. That, of course, is true of the young adults also. As they find their voice, they're able to see clearly what is amiss in our society and in the church, and speak to that. It's not always comfortable. But how necessary is it? I mean, the way we are organizing ourselves as a human community is not working, right? The rich are getting richer. The earth is degrading in front of our eyes. God's call is not to find a little slot into the society we have so that you may be comfortable in it. Rather, God's call is to be part of the new creation so that justice may roll down like waters and earth be saved. Is that what you long for your young children? When we baptize our children at St. Mark's, do we hope that they will so hear God's call that they will say to us, as their elders, "You've got this wrong. You haven't been paying attention"? Do we have the courage to say that to one another, to support each other in love, to together hear God's call to us that changes us, that calls us to be God's people? So, some months ago, Temple here on Lexington Street had a bunch of graffiti in the bathroom, hateful graffiti, which is really hurtful and upsetting. You know, if you've been persecuted as part of the Jewish community through the ages, get really sensitive. Wonder, am I safe here? And so, as we got to know about it in the interfaith community, Dale, who was a member of the UCC church, Congregational Church, just up on the hill, was outraged. You know, she really cared about this. And so she began to call people together to say, we've got to do something. And that was the genesis of the Peace Dinner, which is coming up on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, where we are going to gather as members of an interfaith community and hear from 3 people about what it's been like to grow up in Burlington. There's an older man and a young woman and a not quite so young woman from different ethnicities and different faith traditions are going to be talking about that. And then we'll get to talk to one another at the tables. But well, what do we make of that and what's it been like for us? How can we be a community where peace is what we want and what we are creating together, rather than division and fear and hate, which is where our society seems to be going? If you care about it, then come to dinner, right? Monday, 6 to 8. Sign up as you leave the church. Or do something else. When you go to bed tonight, how about saying, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And pay attention to what happens in the night and how you wake up in the morning. See what it is that's on your heart. See what it is you're good at and love to do, and venture forth. If you need some support, come talk to me. Come to talk to anybody here. That's what we're for, is to support each other, to be God's people in the world, so that the world itself may see what God has in mind for us. Speak, Lord, for your servants are listening.